Uh, Go ahead. Welcome to the Clean Call. I'm happy to be here with you all. Before we get going, it looks like we have an informal discussion that's already has a topic chosen today. Best practices for hosting and planning climate-related conferences and events. I'm excited to talk about that, having some experience doing that. But before we go, let's have everyone go around and introduce themselves, share where you're coming from, and how about you share your favorite way for staying cool, because we are about to hit 101 degrees in St. Paul, and that is crap for Minnesotans. We just don't do that well. So I will go first. I'm Kristen Poppleton, coming to you from the Dakota Anishinaabe lands of Minnesota. I am at Climate Generation. I am the Senior Director of Programs, and I stay cool by heading north. That's what we do in Minnesota. We go north and get in the lake or go to Duluth, which if you go down to Lake Superior, it's usually about a 10-15 degree temperature differential you'll get. So I go north, and I'm doing that Thursday, but that's going to be too late probably to get away from today's heat. And I will pass it to Rachel.
Hello, Rachel Wellman. I'm with FAU Pine Dog Environmental Education Center, currently a program coordinator. And I was also the co-PI of a NOAA ELP grant for Climate Ready, which is Resilience Education and Action for Dedicated Youth. How do I stay cool? Well, I was trying to find it, but we have, I have these really nice scarves, one of which is a cooling scarf that I get wet. I've done this ever since I was a kid, like wore it as a bandana, tie it around my neck, and that's probably my favorite way to stay cool. And we are based in West Palm Beach, Florida, which we're definitely dealing with fluctuating temperatures and extreme heat. Maybe not so much as compared to some of the other parts of the country. I'm really shocked at the Pacific Ocean and how that is being affected by climate change and the hurricane that's coming. So I will pass it on to Patrick.
Hey y'all, I'm Patrick Chandler with Series Education and Outreach, and based in Boulder area. And I stay cool by getting in the water. Whatever water is available, make it happen. And I will pass it to Katie.
Hi everyone, I'm Katie Boyd. I'm the CLEAN Program Manager and work at Series Education and Outreach, which is based in the Boulder, Colorado area, traditional lands of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Ute. And my favorite way of staying cool, it's interesting, yeah, I come originally from the Northwest, so I'm much more of a like freshwater kind of person, lakes and, or not necessarily freshwater, sorry, natural bodies of water, lakes and ocean, or in my case, the Puget Sound or what have you. I like to swim in more of those kinds of things than pools, but now I live in Colorado where there's not as much of those like bodies of water available to get in. I mean, there are, but it's a little further from me. So I've, in fact, and now I have a little one. So I started it's been pretty hot here the last few days. And on Sunday we went to the pool. There's a pool near my house. And it's actually fun. It's a little like water park that our rec center manages and runs. And so we went over there with my 1.5-year-old, and she loves going down the slide and doing all the little splash things and stuff like that. So that was a really nice way to stay cool. And I think we'll start doing that more often. Let's see, Carolyn.
Hey, Carolyn Burns, she, her pronouns. I work for the CLEAN Institute, which is climate education, advocacy, climate environmental justice kind of org. HQ is Miami, but I'm in the Tallahassee office on the traditional lands of the Seminole and Muskogee people. I'll be honest, going to the pool doesn't really do much for us these days because the pool is basically bathtub warm. It's not even refreshing. But we do have springs where the water comes from underground, and it's about 72 degrees year round. So that actually feels really nice when we have, a heat index of, gosh, we had an event last weekend where the heat index is about 110. So that was crazy. Carrie, if you want to go next.
Thanks, Carolyn. So I'm sort of in the opposite boat of Katie. I grew up in the South, in Georgia, where there was lots of pools and not a lot of freshwater bodies of freshwater to go swimming in. So we would go to the pool all the time. But where I am now, there is no pool, and there's only natural occurring bodies of water to swim in. So when it's really hot here, we go to the river and go swimming there. Sometimes we go to the beach. My house doesn't have air conditioning, and there's no way to fully enclose the house either. The windows are essentially open all of the time. And it is a very tropical environment. I'm on the Caribbean coast of Costa Rica. And so to stay cool throughout the day, I just sit in front of a fan, and it's really great. I'm also from the National Center of Science Education. I skipped that to jump right to the important part of how to stay cool. And I'm going to pass it to, I think Katie Wolfson hasn't gone yet.
I think Katie said in the chat.
Oh, she says she needs to stay muted. Yeah,
why don't
thank
you
you, Katie. I
introduce
just saw
yourself in the
that.
chat, Katie, and then Mark, maybe?
Sure. Hi, Mark Minaj, currently in in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area on Ohlone territory. I with a nonprofit, make knowledge that we're doing a lot of work here on climate to career education, especially trying to encourage districts to take advantage of the upcoming Gold State Pathways program in California. That's a California $500 million pot of new funding. And staying cool. We've been really lucky this year, no big heat waves yet in California. So mostly I am limited to fan. I would go with a fan, I think, too. When it is still pretty warm here. It's my best bet right now in California. I realized I don't have a very sophisticated answer to this question. And I'm going to pass it on to Tiffany.
Hi, good morning. Tiffany Boyd, Classrooms for Climate Action. I live in Louisville, Colorado, not that far from Katie Boyd, unrelated, but sharing the last name. Currently, I am in Michigan, and we're trying to figure out how to get a heat pump into both of our homes and have our whole electrical box evaluated so that we can make that transition in a smart way. So heating and cooling is right now all about figuring out the heat pump expense and solar and all that stuff. So yeah, I will pass it over to, I don't know, who hasn't gone. Jump in.
I could jump in.
Oh,
You go for it. You go,
Okay.
Ginger.
Okay. I am trying to figure out my headset.
Ginger, we can't hear you.
Frank, you're muted.
Oh, now I'm not muted.
Okay.
So Frank Neapold, NOAA Climate Program Office. So happy to be with you. Good afternoon. But my favorite way to stay cool is, Tiffany, I was like, where am I going to go with this? And so mine is like right behind me is a lovely heat pump that I've installed, and right above me is great insulation, 35 inches of insulation, and above that are solar panels. And these are really high efficiency windows. I mean, my house has been a project. I've been trying to figure out how to decarbonize and generate locally, and I'm not net zero yet, but I'm heading that direction. So that's my favorite thing to do.
I think I'm back. Can you guys hear me? Yay! I finally figured it out. So it's not just the settings on the computer, apparently it's the settings in Zoom. So I'm Ginger Wireman. I'm with the Washington State Department of Ecology, and I'm in Eastern Washington. where we have had some extreme heat, but not horrible, not for horribly long this summer. And I put up shade sails on my patio, and I also have big shade trees, but the shade sails actually help quite a bit because they prevent the patio from heating up. And I'm near the Columbia River, so I can go to the Columbia River, except for we also have to be careful because we've had a few outbreaks of toxic algae. So like if I take my dogs or whatever, I have to be aware of what's going on. And what were the other prompts? I think that's it. We get everybody, or is Carolyn, did you join, or were you the one who's doing it through chat? Okay.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for sharing. I was just thinking it might be helpful. I'm putting the question that was proposed, best practices for hosting and planning climate related conferences and events. If people wanted to write in the chat, high level themes you think we might go with on that, like best practices and outreach, practices and bringing together partners. I don't know. I thought that might be a place to start. So I was just going to write the question there. If anyone has something that they want to particularly in that topic want to start with or throw out, I'll give everyone like a minute to think if there's things.
I was going to say, and what people think, do you mind if I make an announcement that's also relevant to this discussion? Which is that I think hopefully folks saw this, but we've been working, we had the Excel Summit last year, which is the first time we really hosted like a large meeting through CLEAN, and it was quite successful. And but we're trying to figure out how to keep that going. And some of the conversations from last year led towards like that people wanted more time for kind of like working, collaborating with each other and having sort of deeper discussions. So we've been working with the group organizing that to try to kind of redesign it. And this year Excel's is going to have sort of a kickoff event and then a coming back together event and span sort of a 6 months period. And within that, trying to have groups self-organize themselves to have these sort of deeper discussions and think about kind of whether that's ends up just being discussions around like how to support each other or like the things that we're all doing, or if people like come up with thoughts or ideas for a project, or we're not sure exactly how, where exactly it's going to go, but we're hoping to have a few groups, and we'd like folks to suggest group topics or group themes, and so we're in that stage now. We have I think 3 weeks left or so in the timing for trying to suggest groups. So I'll throw the link for that Google form in the chat, and it has more information. So just thought I'd throw that out there. And if anybody has questions about it, let me know.
So Tiffany contributed a topic. Katie, is there like a succinct question you could boil that to for helping out, or like is there a specific, I don't know, I was trying to extrapolate like from what you were describing how we could be of help. Frank, do you have an idea?
I'll let Katie go first. If I'm sorry, Tiffany, if she wants to respond first.
No, I was just saying that in our work, we've been able to, triple impact the punch when we work with the city of Boulder, when we work with the county, when we work with other nonprofits, when we work with the schools, and the funding streams are more consolidated. Right now, there's a huge effort to do more focus on natural climate solutions, and there's a lot of funding around climate resilient demonstration gardens. And then the school district is wanting to do some things with their land. And so it's a matter of just getting all of the right stakeholders together so that you're linking the youth with the marginalized voices, with the municipal funding, with the county funding, with the IRA funding, with the nonprofits. And I feel like my job is become a human bridge to make sure that we're not duplicating other people's great ideas. And it takes a little longer to get going, but in the end, it's kind of like there's so much more money to work with. There's so many more, boxes to check. There's so many more voices at the table. So yeah, I think a huge thing at any conference or climate education is just really taking the time to dig into all those multiple voices. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
So Tiffany, actually, what you just said really builds on what I was going to put in a series of events starting back in 2017. Really being intentional about the who and taking the extra time to kind of build an architecture of all the voices that need to be represented inside of the whatever you're trying to do, and very much in line with what you just said, Tiffany, right? But if you're having a listening session, if you're having a conference, a summit, a workshop, whatever it is, being able to look at the demographics or the other characteristics and really, see as you're doing your outreach, ooh, man, we have got to do a better job of engaging, diverse communities, or we got to do a better job of indigenous perspectives are just not here yet. So, but that means a lot more lead time. I mean, you said it exactly right, Tiffany. It takes more time, but you get a much better result. So, but the only way that we've been able to is actually have dashboards that are related to the who within your whatever constituency you're trying to assemble for whatever purpose. It just, it does take time. But the other thing it takes, Tiffany, to build on what you just said, it takes a person who's dedicated to that, right? Because it doesn't happen just, send out an announcement and look at that, it all worked out. It doesn't work like that. So I think both the intent and the who, and it's usually a team, but data will guide that process. So that's really important.
Carolyn.
I guess this might be sort of best practices in general, but we held a climate education summit in Miami in October of last year. We meaning the CLEAN Institute, where I work. And what we found was that we had a lot of issues with attendance, and people needed a lot more babysitting than we had anticipated in order to get them to go from signing up to actually attending and participating. We got responses like, oh, well, I didn't hear anything about it until the week before. And it's like, when you signed up for this, we have you as having registered several months ago. And I don't know if it's just that maybe this is a teacher thing in particular where they do tend to be, very busy and overwhelmed. I know that a lot of folks from marginalized communities are experiencing the same things. But yeah, basically you're going to want to keep in touch as you go through sort of like a lengthy planning process. Keep looping people in, keep reminding them. I honestly find the email after email every day for 2 weeks leading up to the conference to be very annoying, but apparently that's what people need to actually not forget that it's going to be happening. So that was kind of a lesson learned for us.
Thanks for sharing that, Carolyn.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Where's my hand?
Rachel.
Rachel next.
Hi, thanks. So let me see, how do I lower my hand? There it is. Okay. So what I guess is on my mind, and something that we tried with our Climate Ready program, was having a collaborative and keeping our teachers and participants connected and communicating, because like Carolyn was saying, emails are, can be very overwhelming actually, even though it is a great way to correspond. I mean, that's how CLEAN connects. But what we found is we've used a platform such as what we ended up using was Google Classroom, and then I did a presentation on this at AGU, but it did actually really help in providing a platform for the teachers to even communicate amongst each other and for us to provide material without having to send out so many emails. Because Google, you can actually program it such that Google will even send out emails to participants or people that are involved in the so-called classroom. And I know that there are other platforms that are probably useful too, and I'm wanting to learn more about those, but I guess Google was one that I've been engrossed in for a number of years, even as a classroom teacher. So keeping them connected, I think that would be, a suggestion from my part. And also from the perspective of a formal classroom teacher, we always established our meetings with norms, and even if we've met millions of times before, it was always a good idea to just kind of establish that sense of comfort in terms of communicating and providing a nice safe space for everybody.
Ginger.
Well, I was just gonna say that, and some of you have heard me talk about this before, we really need to just beat the bushes for complementary organizations and issues. The public health community is the first and foremost that always comes to my mind. And municipalities, some are super proactive, like Boulder. Tiffany's program, Growing Up Boulder has been around for a couple of years that you're affiliated with, I think, from what the web is telling me. And I had learned about Growing Up Boulder through the International Association for Public Participation, because they're actually engaging their children in municipal planning questions. And, those do have the potential to affect their experience with climate change. Who knows whether those city planners ever uttered the words climate change, but if they're talking to the kids about what makes a more livable, more comfortable city, most children are smart enough to figure out that shade trees are a good thing. Or more splash pads, which, okay, great. That's a place to go when you have a heat wave and you need to go get out of the house and cool off. So the other thing might be to look for a local preschool teacher, like if there's any associations for preschool teachers, because I think, unless you're like at the NAE, whatever, North American Environmental Education thing, I think most people who come to these meetings are in the K-12 or higher ed sector. What's going on in the preschool world? And can you involve their teachers in these questions too? So it's hard because we've all traveled in our usual circles, but we have got to figure out how to expand the circles and create more complementary systems.
Well, I can share a little, and I'm gonna give like 99.9% of the credit to Lindsay Kirkland, our education manager. But we, in planning the institute, the ed team has really refined a framework that's kind of based on looking at 4 dimensions the last 4 years. People, culture, processes, and content. And that really came out of like all the things that happened after March 13th, 2020, recognizing that we needed to be way more deliberate in who we were giving voice and decision-making power to, and how we were planning this event that was supposed to be representative of education and of our partners that we work with. And so every year when they're kind of in their planning process, they're thinking about people in terms of bringing in diverse identities at every level of decision making. And so, as probably all of you know, we work with a cohort of anywhere from 12 to 18 organizations from across the country to help co-plan the Institute. We work with speakers, invite speakers from all over the world to present. We bring in intergenerational perspectives, kind of thinking about that. We try to, develop a culture that's transparent and it's about learning and co-learning. We try to focus on creating systems and processes that are decentering ourselves, and the content is, inherently interdisciplinary, rooted in justice, and bringing in, following where climate education is moving and like making sure that that's part of it. And so Lindsay can expound on that way more. I believe she and I wrote an article for NSTA a couple of years ago. I think the beginning of her thinking on that is in that, but that's kind of like having that framework has been really helpful for me in terms of thinking through not just our institute now, but just our work in general. And so that's something that we think about when planning. Any other thoughts, questions, ideas, frustrations, problem solving? Mark?
Sure. Yeah. I guess, what I put in the chat was like has been on my mind. I've been, I don't know that sometimes organizers fully realize how much the audience wants to be activated, and then they walk away going, now what? Like I've just had all this good information come at me, but I want, now I want to take the next step. And I think just being conscious about that in the planning process, if you're the conference organizers, how might the audience want to take the next step? And I think, because sometimes you walk away feeling like, well, this was a really good PBS special or TED kind of talk, right? And I heard some really smart people, and not only their work is amazing, they're powerful, but their connections are amazing. They've, they know the funders, and they know, they've done and then, but how do I take the next step to get involved? And it's not, not remotely. There have been a few too many maybe where I'm just like, I wouldn't know, right? How to take the next step in ways that make sense. And no aspersions, right? Sometimes these things aren't set up that way. There are proceedings from a scientific body or something, and it's not really, you can tell that there's the intention that it will have an effect, but then there's no structural accommodation for it.
Yeah, I put in the chat, but does anyone have examples of ways that they have offered specific avenues for action? I see Ginger nodding her head and her hand is up. Go, Ginger.
At the Spokane NAAEE session, North American Association for Environmental Educators, I think it was Portland Metro, that had like a pledge button and got us all to write down a pledge after our session. And have any of you heard of community-based social marketing? I'll put a link in the chat. There's a guy that teaches community-based social marketing, and there's all kinds of research that says if people pledge to do something, they are way more likely to actually follow through. So maybe that's an ask for the presenters, is that every session try to think of a concrete plan that people can take with them moving forward. A few of you guys know that I'm related to Billie Eilish. And one of her things that she does at her concerts is tries to get people to pledge to eat less meat. I don't know that they've tried to do any follow-up research, but they're working it hard and they're doing a lot of education. And I bet you that in the, preteen to 20-year-old group, going to a Billie Eilish concert and having her ask them to take responsibility and stop eating as much meat is probably actually resulting in change for a lot of kids. So the pledge thing is important.
Great.
So, this comes up often, right? And I mean, lots of conferences and organizations have tried so many variety of tools and structures for this exact purpose, right? You come to a meeting, you meet a bunch of people, they give you a list of participants. Maybe they email you once after the event and said, you should talk. Maybe you share business cards, which seems to be passe these days. The only tool that I see that I've successfully worked is LinkedIn. That's it. Everything else, because it's durable, and durable in a couple of important ways, right? Durable in the sense that, like, I just reconnected with Oliver from the Utah meeting, Kristen. He's actually working in the sustainability office for the mayor of Boston, right? He left Somerville. And so it's durable, meaning that as people move around, we all move around over time, those relationships endure. So, Rachel, now we're connected, right? And Mark, we're going to connect hopefully very soon, right? But this kind of convening is important. But if you don't have those tools that allow the endurable connections, especially as people move around, it's really hard to make that work. At the end of the day, it's about relationships, which are both cultivated and initiated. God, we've tried so many ways of doing this, right? But I think that it's really can't be inside an event, because it's inside the event, then you have to go back to that website. And that doesn't really happen very often. So I don't know. I mean, we've got to find better ways, but I think it's that durable and easy ways of doing it. I don't know of anything better than LinkedIn. So, unless somebody's got something better than that, I'm all ears, because I put a lot of time over there.
Carolyn.
I will say I agree with you about LinkedIn. That's kind of whenever I have, a meeting, after a meeting, I look through the business cards and then go, follow up with people, send them connections. Anytime I meet someone for the first time, we sort of have, a meeting of some kind, to see like, hey, like, what are you all about? How could we work together? That's the next step that I take. I will say that for things that Clio does, we always have some kind of action alert on our website, and we include that as part of the event, where we'll say, all right, everyone, we're going to pause the talk, or before we all sit down and have some food, please everyone take out your phones, scan this QR code, whatever it is. And I'm trying to think of what we have. Like right now, what we have is calling on the Department of Education to meet with us and talk about the approval of PragerU misinformation videos in the context of Florida curriculum. And then we still have ask Biden to declare a climate emergency, but just whatever's going on, we try to have some kind of action alert relevant to whatever the conference is. And then, we ask people, okay, send this to, friends and family. And then that just gives them something else to sort of connect over, and to feel like, as other folks were saying, to feel like they've taken that next step and that they've done some kind of concrete action that will keep them more connected to the cause over time.
Cool. Thanks. Rachel. Oh, you're muted still.
Thank you. Okay. I lowered my hand thinking, oh, that's on mute. Actually, my comment totally relates to what Carolyn was just saying. Actually, anything that is action related, in our programming here at Pine Dog, we try to incorporate anything that's hands-on. I mean, that's thinking back to the classroom teacher too. Is anything by doing, you learn by doing. Not, there's a lot of talk and there's a lot of writing maybe, but especially with the younger generations, if they're actually taken away even from the phones and doing something with their hands. So one of our top actions that we have incorporated in our programming is collaborating or working with Ning, which they are propagating mostly red mangroves, but the other two as well, black and red. And I'm sorry, or black and white rather. But there are students and our participants actually go to their nursery and help them with repotting the propagules, or they even have opportunities of planting these out onto the coast, or anything that's an actual action. And when I was a classroom teacher, we had collaborations with other folks that were doing coastal restoration or Everglades restoration. And so anything that's actually bringing those participants as part of the action, it really, brings the issue to the forefront of their minds, and it gives them a better context, I think.
These are such wisdom here. Tiffany, bring it on.
Yeah, totally agree. I love what Carolyn was talking about giving people a QR code and kind of like collective action in the moment. I think that's amazing. I feel like for, all of us in this Zoom room today probably received the standard kind of environmental education growing up, where it was all about individual action and go home and do this with your family. And just because of the timeline we're on and the crisis of climate, I feel like we really do kids a disservice if we don't connect it with civic engagement. And so focusing on systems change and focusing on what is already happening in their community. And I love any kind of professional development for teachers, any kind of conferences where you leave time for people to either work in their teams where they came from, or like you said, to do that research about who are these groups that are focusing on environmental racism in my community. Who are these groups that are already so that they can get behind what's already happening and really get kids tuned in to elevating the voices of those who have been harmed for generations, and also just to kind of put time and energy behind existing things, right? So it doesn't make a lot of sense to reinvent the wheel and to try and find some sort of great thing for kids to participate in if it already exists. And so I think giving people time during the conference to really either work with the people that they've come from, or to work together to investigate who are these groups that we should be elevating their voices. So I just think we don't have time to do individual environmental action anymore. This is about systems change. This is about quickly linking kids from the science to the civic engagement. And so I think there's a sense of urgency there, and also a sense of making sure the right voices are being put forward.
Ginger,
Something that Tiffany said, I mean, yeah, partnering with people from where you are, but I think maybe we need to start trying to set a cultural norm of helping people who aren't from where you are. Because some people are like, the lone person in Eastern Washington in a logging and ranching community, and they just feel like they're swimming, upstream and don't have any local resources. So maybe asking for mentors from other places, and for teachers, like I know Globe used to have, or I'm sure they still do, where they're like pen pals and stuff like that. And I think knowing that there are other people out there, even if they don't have the same issue, they have an issue, and what are they doing to address that issue, is very powerful in giving people a sense of empowerment that, well, somebody else can do it, so we can do this.
Yeah, sorry, I'm gonna jump in quick just because it's so in response to Ginger. We were really, so the Summer Institute, you know, has become so like scale-wise broad that when we think about keynotes and panels that we bring in for the whole audience versus just the local level parts, we've been really kind of like not struggling, but like it's been a challenge thinking about those things, Ginger. And this year I was super pleased with the feedback and response from the discussion actually with Carolyn and Karen in California. And before, so Karen Cow is with 10 Strands in California, Carolyn is in Florida. And obviously there's some very unique challenges in both of those places with climate change education. They're different, but they're challenges, right? And we have we also were just really, sometimes you have to like, you know, Carolyn had told like the real truth of the shit that's happening in Florida right now, right? And teachers needed to hear that too. It wasn't disparaging to them. Like they were like, yeah, thank you so much for like bringing this forward, this challenge. And you know, Karen on the other hand is worrying about like their schools going underwater or burning down. I mean, you know, and air quality. And so I think finding those, we were talking a little bit about, oh wait, this is my last conversation, but Frank and Katie were in that and Patrick, so I'm confused right now. We were talking about vertical versus horizontal, like, but like just sort of thinking about how, when do we go in deep on a specific and when to pull out vertical or horizontal themes versus going vertical. I don't know. I think it's an interesting like question and thought, and something to be, you know, always aware of when you're thinking. And I think the final thing is just that we were like, oh God, like, our, you know, no, Carolyn's like gonna bring this real like nasty truth of like what it's like to be a teacher. Is that going to be too much for teachers? We were wondering, but actually it wasn't at all. It was just such a like almost empowering to them to be like, yes, there's someone else that's like in the situation that I'm in, and they're like finding ways to work through that and do something, you know. All right, Frank.
So something, Tiffany, you said, and Carolyn, about the action piece is, I know this isn't totally directly related to the topic, but I mean, you know, and some of you've heard me talk about this, but one of the realities we've been exploring at NOAA is the people who are leading subnational climate action, city offices, counties, sometimes state, sometimes big states, sometimes small states, but the people who are climate change officers, climate resilience officers, sustainability officers, you know, you name it. And that role is really expanding across the country at all levels of society. But boy, do they need help, massive help. And one of the things they really need help with is engaging the community in the actions, the collective actions they've already committed to, planned, and are implementing. But, you know, so Tiffany, I think some of your work in Boulder is probably tapping into that intersection of the education systems and the climate action office and functions. But there's a real relationship there between those, and different partners across the nation have really found this out, that, you know, when you work there, between them, you have access to big actions that a lot of people are calling for. And you're like, oh, we are so beyond being called for. We need help in the doing phase. And I think that really just shifts the work, and it actually makes it normal that, oh, we've been planning for this for 10, 15 years already. It's not like we don't need. So there's something there that I think is crucial in this conversation, because, you know, if we're going to convene people around a workshop related to climate education, my sense is that you better have people who are doing the work, who actually need access to those educators. The educators need access to the actions. Well, that's where they are. And so, I think that we haven't gotten a topical focus specific to this conversation, but I think that that's a really important part of best practices, bring them into this space explicitly and normalize them as a partner in this work.
Rachel.
So I'm curious, is there a member of CLEAN that is a part of FXB Climate Advocates, and have you guys heard of them? I mention it because we've actually been working with them the last few years, and they've tuned into our kind of summits, in a way, our institutes. And this last summer, our last cohort of students were connected with folks from Africa, from Mali and Ghana, and what they were doing in terms of being climate advocates for their communities. And so I've just been super impressed with FXB. I sent a link in the chat. And if you do click on the link, you'll notice that there's a huge network, a global network of these climate activists, or advocates rather. And there's even a chapter. I have to give a shout out to my former student, Denisha Blaze. She was a co-founder of the Florida chapter. And so it's just really an amazing group. I mention it because, for one, they provide a platform to keep these teens and actually younger youth or younger adults connected. They're talking to each other. They are providing action plans, and they're doing action plans related to climate. And so, I don't know, maybe that's something that can be expanded on.
Thanks, Rachel. Is there any other thoughts? Katie, was there any like ASILS related tidbit that might be useful for us to close out with talking about, or not to put you on, but I am.
No, I think this is really useful. I think for us, like, yeah, we've just been trying to follow some of the stuff you were talking about last year. But the new iteration of Excel is just so different this year that, like, I'm not entirely sure what's going to come out of it or what to expect from it. So, we have the kickoff event. We were talking about this a little bit last week too. And that is something that the organizing committee will try to put together. But in terms of like what it looks like in terms of the groups meeting and what comes out of that. And so then the spring, like, come back together. Yeah, it's just like, it's interesting because it's kind of different. Excel, we followed a little bit more of last year, the format, of like conferences, but really trying to have it be that engaging conference, people, breakout discussions, and a lot of time for discussions. And when we did have like keynotes, like, trying to put those into panels or have it be an activity that people engaged in around climate, mental health and things like that. And I think that was beneficial. That's something that Mark was talking about earlier, right? Like that idea of like really getting people that ability to engage and be part of the discussion and things like that. But yeah, this year, I think some of that might happen, in this kickoff event. But it's then more of the groups to kind of chart their own paths a little bit. So it's going to be a little bit different than other events. So I'm trying to figure out how it kind of ties in with this discussion. Like, hearing all these great ideas and thoughts is really useful. But yeah, I'm a little bit like, I'm not sure, Kristen, to answer your question. So
Cool.
yeah, the Matrix people loved, Frank, when we put that together. So I think that's worth doing again this year. That's a great point. Your thoughts? You've been part of the Excel's organizing stuff, so.
I mean, I love that matrix, and I don't know why I love it, but I think it's just got so much power.
Do you have I can find the link. Let me find the link. I'll put it in the chat.
The simplest way of thinking
ahead.
about the matrix is here, if you have all the audiences that are involved in, you know, education for climate action, however you want to describe our work, right? All the audiences down the one, you know, across the rows, right? And then all the columns is the ways that we interact with them, all the different possible ways that we interact with them. And then you draw connections between, oh, look, the K-12 teacher, professional development, K-12 teacher, professional development, and we found a cluster of people that are working in the next year with that audience. They should know each other. They should explore possible collaborations together. It's just a really simple idea where if you're doing youth empowerment, you know, with Indigenous youth, like that's, you know, you know, that's a different intersection. Or we found these natural clusters. Katie, how many people did we have complete the matrix last year? It was like, it wasn't a ton of people, but you know, the body of work, if we actually had an understanding of who's working with similar audiences, right, 52.
Yeah.
So that's not a lot of people, but if we actually had the, you know, across the nation, or it doesn't even need to have national limitations, who is working with which audiences in what ways in the coming future, then we would collaborate there so that we would be able to really see what could we do while we're about to do something, as opposed to here's what we just did. Collaboration is so much more powerful in what we're about to do than what we just did. So, I mean, that was I think that was just the brilliance of the Excel idea. And, you know, I'm excited to see if we can keep that forward-looking collaborations of audience and modality of working with that audience. I think that would open up a lot of expanded impact.
Cool. I don't think I ever saw this. So cool.
Well, Kristen, isn't it cool?
These things. I love spreadsheets.
I know,
I mean,
it's really nice. And I think it helps.
Kristen, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying it just helped with some of the conversations on the second day. We had a lot of people fill it out early and then tried to kind of help it steer the conversations on the second day. And I think people have looked at it since then as well. But yeah, Frank, I wonder if it's like we need to figure out how to kind of build on this. Do something with it this year. Yeah.
But even like, you know, if we saw like, oh, we've missed an audience, let's just keep on noodling on the audiences and the ways you work with those audiences. I mean, it's a dynamic sheet, right? It doesn't have to be, we could push it and be like, how did we forget that audience? But I mean, Kristen, I knew you would love this thing once you finally got your eyes on it. But you know, it's really simple to do, but really has a tremendous amount of potential.
Cool. Ginger, you have a short.
Yeah. If we could figure out how to make this into a visual tool that shows the connections, like a food web or, you know, spokes in a wheel, and God, if there was a way to make it interactive where people could, if it were on the web and people could say, I'm in that spoke, and somehow submit their data to be added so that we can see those connections.
If you answered the survey last year that we sent out, that is essentially what we did with the data on that. And that is the forthcoming paper if anyone will publish it for us.
Yeah, and we can get it published. I do have the images of that too. So if anybody wants to stick around, I'll put that. I'm finding them now. I'll put those in the chat. They're not interactive though, but I will say that there is a group in Colorado, the STEM like learning ecosystem or something like that, that's done a similar like network analysis, and then they've used this tool to put it online, and people can keep adding themselves and like updating, and that would be cool. I mean, it'd be a bigger project. They're like a funded project within CDE, I think, or something like that. But yeah, and if anybody's curious about the social network analysis maps, I shared something about that on a CLEAN call a while back, and showed the maps themselves. So I'll find those slides and I can even send them out to CLEAN today.
I think that'd be great. Yeah, that would be cool. I'd like to see those. And if you could figure out a way to get them online, hosted somewhere, that people would maybe, because it's the systems thinking that is missing from everything. And that's where we have to force people to start thinking about those connections.
Cool. Yeah, I'll
encourage.
Take me just a minute, but I'll find those slides I put together about the results of the survey we did and send
Cool.
those on the clean email list. So
Perfect. Thanks. Have a great week, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week. Bye.
thanks, everybody. Hey, Carrie.
Hey, Katie, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Yeah, again, this is not questions about the lesson set, which I know I've been pestering you and Frank about. But I do appreciate you offering to ping him. I know he went on vacation. I know he's been busy, especially with this literacy guide coming
Yeah,
up.
but he does the same thing to me. He's like, anyways, yeah, he takes forever to do things, and yet I end up having to text him, first of all, and then second of all, he still doesn't do them. So I often just move forward without him on some of the clean stuff like this, where like he'll do the review camp and he'll say, I'm gonna update my annotations. And I'm like, we'll just move forward with, because he never does it. And so I just do it, and I just look at the comments from the discussion that they take notes on and try to kind of do it myself. So
If
I
if
will
you want to
warn
just
you.
pass me the notes, I'd be
So, and
happy
I
with
think
that.
I think I did, but let me pull them up again and just make sure. Do you remember the title of that one?
Back to the Future Climate Edition.
Thank you.
And
I think I
again,
tried to when you first reached out about it, but then it was just like making sure that Frank had actually put all his thoughts in there, you know? Yeah, because that was the thing. They did add this note of like the review team will send the developer suggestions for the editorial board to improve the resource. So they didn't necessarily put all of their thoughts in here. So it does require Frank a little bit, but I will send you but these are the notes that they did give us on it. So I'll just send this in an email because it's kind of longer
Perfect.
than chat. So
Perfect. And like I said, we've been like the few things that Frank has told me, which is like update the links. There's some broken links, and this JImage program is a little confusing. Can you add in like some more support to that? We've done both of those things, but I just wanted to make sure before we send it off to a graphic designer that it actually resolves those things plus anything else they have concerns about, because I don't necessarily want to go through this one time and then find out that we didn't quite get it right and then have to go through it again. I'd rather just do it once if possible. And then once we do have all that sorted out, I'll just share it with you if that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I'm
go
sending you
ahead.
this email that has this, and then yeah, it would be nice to get Frank to kind of like make sure that those are the only two things, because those were the only two things.
Hold on,
that
I'm
are...
so sorry, Katie. I have a small child asking me questions. ¿Qué pasó?
Yes.
¿Quién va a hacerlo para ti? Sí, claro. Okay, gracias. Ciao, Lana. Sorry, my niece wants a ramen noodle. And I'm like, I'm not making that for you. Who's making that for you?
Mommy, go ask someone else.
Yeah, her mom said she would, so that's fine.
That's good.
They come during the week and spend time in the house, so she eats all of our cookies, and now she's in her ramen noodles, so whatever.
That's nice. I didn't know that more of your family was down there with you.
This is all my spouse's family. So this is
nice.
his oldest niece and her child. So she's like 28 and her kid is turning 6. So
oh, wow, that's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. She's real cute. She's gotten to be more respectful as time has gone on. This asking to eat things is a big deal. Not just eating them.
Right.
Like, I'm going to say yes to you every single time. I just need you to learn to be polite, child. Anyways, thank you for sharing with me the information. Let me see. I think it came through. I just got it.
Okay. Yeah, let's see if we can get Frank's like okay on it before you send it to the developers or the designers. So, do you have Frank's phone number? Or
I don't.
I can text him and just say that that he needs to contact you because you have a deadline of sending this.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I'll just
And
tell
I-
him that that I sent him the review comments on the broken links and that tool. But if there's anything else he needs to tell you by what, like Friday, the end of this week, basically.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I'll just text him and tell him that.
No, but this is really helpful because there are some other things in here that I didn't, that I think are that I need to clarify that I didn't realize. So in
Cool.
the last activity, for example. So anyways,
Cool.
so yes. The real things I wanted to talk about, one is Excels and one is a potential opportunity for a collaboration between CLEAN and NCSC in the spring. So for Excels, one of the things we're interested in is we use the different assessment pieces for student understanding for evolution and the nature of science, SESI as an example, but nothing like that exists for climate or climate change. And so we're interested to help our research along and to create a tool that could be used by researchers who want to see the effectiveness of different curriculum pieces, but also just get a better understanding of how students are understanding climate change in the now. And I'm wondering if that's a topic you think there would be a lot of interest in.
I do. I think that's something that's been talked about before. I'm gonna send you oh, that's interesting. I didn't know about that one. I do know that there was, see, I thought it was interesting. Sorry.
Take your time.
There was an effort a little bit ago. I know, there it is. There's this woman, Julie, is it Lee Barkin or Lie Barkin? I'm not sure. And I don't know if you guys have access to like articles like this, but I do through the university, so I can always send you the PDF if you want. But I'm just gonna put the link to the like Springer Journal. And I know Anna was involved with this, and they did developed like a climate change concept inventory.
Mhm.
I do, however, think it may have been geared more towards college level, but I'm not positive about that. But that's like the one thing that I know where somebody did work to try to develop that idea of like, how do we measure what people know about climate change?
Yeah, so I don't have access to this article, so
me,
if you would share it with me, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I just have to log into my VPN real quick.
Take your time.
Jeez, what is my password? Okay, Carrie, can you hear me?
Yes.
I had to log into my VPN, which sometimes interrupts my internet.
I know all about that.
Oh, oops, this is PDF. Let me actually download it and then I'll attach it, or I'll email it to you either way.
Sure.
Oh wait, yeah, I have to send that separately. Let me just get in my downloads. I think I can attach PDFs through Zoom here. Okay, can you get that PDF? Oh, I have to actually send it to you.
Yeah.
I have to actually press send. That would help. Come on, Zoom. There you go.
Yes.
There it is.
I got it.
Cool.
Thank you for sharing that with me. I'll take it back
And yeah, let
to,
me know
go ahead.
if I don't know if they have the actual questions here. This is the journal article about it, they may not have the actual questions, but I would guess they may have like a link to them somewhere. And so if not, like I said, Anna was involved with this, so I can always ask her where you can actually access the instrument itself. But like I said, this could be a starting point. I do think it's still valuable. This is the only one that I personally know about that anybody's even tried to do this. So, and I don't know that it's at a high school or lower level. And I think it's still valuable because I know you guys have done this, like you said, for evolution and other things in the past. So
Yeah, and I mean, this is something that we're really interested in. I know Lynn actually brought this up at, I think, NARST a few years back, and it was just before COVID, so it didn't fly because there was a lot going on, to say the least.
yeah,
So we think that this is a really good time to circle back to it, and we think that if there are interested parties, that Excels might be a good place to start, because the outcomes is working groups, right? So this would be a very physical thing that you could get out of this potentially. So we think that if there are interested partners, that this might be a good topic for us to bring forward.
totally.
So if you think yes, then I'll go ahead and direct my colleague Wendy to go ahead and start putting together a proposal.
That'd be great. We did say on the Excels that we were trying to like encourage collaboration. So like asking for at least 2 people from 2 different organizations to submit a proposal. And I'm trying to think of like, I know there are others in CLEAN that would be interested in assessment on climate change. So if I just like can't think of anyone off the top of my head,
Email me.
who's talked a lot about assessment. If anybody comes to mind, I will. The other thing you could do would be to just email the CLEAN Network and say, hey, we have this idea. Is anybody else interested in this assessment idea?
That's a great
and want
idea.
to collaborate with us? So yeah.
I will ask Wendy to put something together. I'll wait a couple days to see if you end up thinking of someone, and if not, I'll have Wendy put something together if she doesn't have anyone specific in mind, and I'll send it through the CLEAN Network. But that was also a great idea. No, so that was super helpful. You should expect to see something from us as far as a proposal.
That'd be
The
awesome.
second piece is that we, at the NSTA meeting in, where was it? In Atlanta, was it Atlanta where they just had it? Yes, it was Atlanta where they just had it in the spring. We were approached by someone out of NSTA wanting us to put together a half-day workshop or full-day workshop for the spring conference, which is in Denver. And we were thinking about doing something that is focused on climate solutions. We have one of our lesson sets that is purely based around understanding what are the outcomes that we're seeing on climate change and what are the solutions that already exist that could be enacted, and how effective are those different solutions, and tackling misconceptions like it's too expensive or there aren't solutions or whatever, right? In our conversations about potentially doing this, I thought of CLEAN and the Climate Mental Health Network, which I know you guys have a collaboration on. And we were wondering if you might be interested in working together with us and doing this half-day workshop with us.
Yes, I will say yes. We are very interested in NSTA in Denver this year because it's local to us. And I know there's actually a bunch of people, not just CLEAN, but from Series E&O. There was some discussion of like, maybe we even get an exhibit booth or something, because there's so many of us who have interest, but we haven't figured that out yet. And we have done NSTA workshops in the past on climate change education with other partners, and that is definitely something of interest to us. So yes, yes, yes. And I will say the climate mental health stuff is good. The other piece that I'll bring in, which is like connected to CLEAN, we have their resources in CLEAN, but not specifically CLEAN. There's another project that is managed in Series E&O through a colleague of mine called Heart Force, and they've developed curriculum and resources around, natural hazards and community resilience, but they have like curriculum and games and this like really build up for students to try to get them involved in community resilience efforts in their communities. Sometimes that's been like students just learning about the process and talking to emergency managers, but it has gone towards students actually taking on projects and doing things like wildfire mitigation in their communities or what have you. So like that's something like very solutions oriented as well, and they might be interested. So
I just want to be clear, this would be a PLI as opposed to like a 1-hour workshop. So we would actually have people come in for like prior to the conference itself. So if you
Right.
wanted to also pursue doing some of the conference workshops, like doing some of those as well, that would be completely separate,
So
and
is
you'd be
this
welcome to do that.
is this through your own, you're setting up your own workshop, not an STA one, and it's just attached to the conference, or it's one of their professional, like their
It's one of
pre-conference
theirs.
workshops?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
one
yeah,
of
yeah.
their pre-conference professional learning institute day, like
Yeah.
offerings. So they usually have 4 or 5. And so we were hoping that we could put together some kind of proposal. I think I think this idea of going from like, all right, have students learn about it and then drive them into this, have them actually do something about it, like what I think you might be proposing with the Heartland, it's not Heartland. Say
Heart
it one more time.
Force.
Heart Force.
Yeah.
Like what you're proposing with Heart Force, I think that's a great idea. And then I also think weaving a lot of the climate mental health in there as well is something worthwhile. We've had
And
a lot
that
of our
project, we've been collaborating with them because they're really interested in that mental health piece. And the woman who's done the mental health stuff on CLEAN has been working with that project as well to try to weave in a lot of that like trauma-based pedagogy into that project as well. So yeah, I think it ties in really well.
So let me bring this back to Lynn and let her know that you're interested. And let me
Yeah.
see what I can get together with her as far as setting up a meeting so that we can start the process of this collaboration.
Yeah, and same with me. I'll bring it back to Anna because
Okay.
she is involved with both projects and all the more on the stuff on around NSTA, and see who else would be good to bring into this. So yeah, when's the actual deadline for proposing?
I'm not certain, but I am going to be, let me check my schedule right now. I was planning on speaking to Lynn about it today because the rest of her afternoon is clear. And if she can't today for some reason, tomorrow morning. So if I email you by the end of the week to sort of start getting the ball rolling, would that be okay with you?
Yeah, that'd be great. I just
Okay.
like Anna and I we usually have our meetings on Mondays, so like ours is until next Monday, and we have CLEAN meetings on Wednesdays, but ours for this week is canceled. So like I'm not necessarily meeting with them till next week, but I could always bring it up through chat or email and talk to them separately. But yeah, if you want to like talk to Lynn and then send me an email with some more details that I could forward along, then I could like send it out to Anna and then talk to her about it on Monday, and hopefully that would still be enough time. But if you need a response sooner, just let me know.
No,
Otherwise,
I don't
it's
think so.
sometimes easier to wait till I have this meeting versus email. So
I understand. That's why like I'm talking to you about this after a CLEAN meeting and not bringing it to you through email.
Exactly.
I understand. So no, I'll talk to Lynn and I should be able to get back to you with like next steps and deadlines by Friday.
Cool. That sounds great. Awesome.
Well, I
thank
really
you.
appreciate you, Katie. I know you're juggling a lot of different things, so I really appreciate you. I see the hard work you're doing. Thank you for everything.
Oh, thank you, Karen. You as well, or Carrie. You as well. No, I really appreciate you saying that, and that's why I appreciate working with NCSE and having you be part of CLEAN, because like this is how this all happens, right? So
we're trying. I keep telling Lynn, I was like, we have to make sure that we, like when she said climate solutions, I was like, oh, CLEAN. It's in Denver. This makes sense. Like this is
Totally,
the obvious partnership.
I really love that. Yeah, no, I think we're definitely on board. So let's
Okay, cool.
keep talking about it.
Awesome.
And yeah, I'll text Frank and then just keep me posted on the climate, the assessments stuff. And I'll let you know if anybody else comes to mind, but otherwise, yeah, go ahead and reach out and see if anybody jumps on that. It's not something that had come to mind for me with
Mhm.
Excel stuff, but that's because we were so focused on some of the, like, you know, the groups we had put together last year and just like as examples. But I definitely, this is something that I know has been talked about in
Mhm.
Clean Circles the last couple of years and would be of interest. So I like that idea.
Awesome.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Carrie.
You have a good one.
You too. Bye.